Hello everyone, this is JPL, and today I'm joined with...
Jay.
And Christopher.
Yes, and we are Podcast Name in Brackets, back once again for our monthly edition of the Top 5. And this month we are going over the top 5 films of 2011, which is a year. Um,
Ostensibly.
yeah, theoretically. Yeah, I think this was the year where I started to build a sense of standards. Because it's around this time where I maybe am not loving every film that I came across, and films are starting to be like not good in my opinion from my little, I don't know, 13-year-old brain. And so yeah, I'm no
No, that
longer
is
watching the
definitely
kids
something that
films, and then
happens.
now I'm moving on to like the teenage films, you know.
Yeah, I think this year for me, I was still in that phase of like everything I see I like, but I'm probably starting to get because I'm just like slightly younger than you. Um, but yeah, I am starting to get to the point of like, oh yeah, I'm thinking a little bit more about the movies I'm watching, being a little bit more aware. Yeah.
Jay, tell us about the films of this year.
Yeah, so this year is interesting. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, this is the first year to have three movies that gross over $1 billion at the worldwide box office. This is, of course, the final Harry Potter film, Transformers, the third one, and Pirates of the Caribbean, the fourth one. Those are the official titles, in case anyone was wondering. Um,
Yeah.
which is like fascinating that like yeah, the worldwide box office has gotten to the point where it is strong enough to propel these big franchise movies to that level of success. um yeah, there are no original films in this top 10 here, and all but one of them are sequels. The one that isn't a sequel is the Smurfs, which obviously isn't original. Yeah,
Oh boy.
we'll be talking about some of these later on, and some of them we won't be talking about. I haven't seen the Smurfs, so that didn't make my top 5.
I have. That
we have
was a
we have a
shame.
chance to redeem that this year.
Yep.
Redeem is such a high word, Christopher.
I heard a rumor. Is Rihanna somehow involved?
I don't know. Our herder was Zendaya. What?
No, Zendaya is Michi.
Ah.
Wait, is she actually in it?
No, that's the meme. There's a big
Is
poster
it?
for the animated movie Smallfoot from a few years ago. That's just like an animated, weird looking Yeti, and then it just in big text says Zendaya is Michi.
That's incredible stuff right
As if
there.
we are supposed to know who Michi is, this character invented for this movie. Anyway, character posters aside, we should do top 10 character posters. Anyway,
Uh.
the Oscars. This is often considered a weak year for the Oscars, and yeah, looking at the nominees, there's a lot of stuff that is a little bit weaker. The Artist becomes the first silent film to win since the first Oscars in 1929. Um, yeah, I believe only the second silent film ever to. Well, yeah, because the first Oscars, and then after that, it was all sound winners. So, um,
Nice.
yeah, interesting stat. It isn't a completely silent film, but I do think it is worth. It's only like one scene that isn't silent, so worth bringing up for that.
Yeah.
But yeah, other awards: Tree of Life wins the Palme d'Or. Golden Lion goes to Faust, a movie which I've never heard of. The Razzie Worst Picture winner I have heard of is Jack and Jill, the Adam Sandler movie.
I have a
Yeah.
friend at work who loves referring to this movie with the longest name possible. I don't remember the current iteration, but he'll go, um, the Adam Sandler movie Jack and Jill, which stars Adam Sandler as both Jack and Jill.
and Al Pacino as Dunkachino.
Yeah.
That's like all I know about this movie.
If
I
you look
should
at
have
the
watched it.
poster, there it says it comes out 11/11/11. So
Oh, that's
Okay, so it
incredible
was
we
one
were
of
stuff
we
right
were
those.
there.
just we were just talking about that off the podcast. So
Yeah, same day as Tarsum's The Immortals,
ooh.
starring Henry Cavill as a Greek guy.
Ooh.
I've seen that trailer because that trailer is kind of cool. So I've seen that trailer many times. Anyway, the MTV movie of the year is the Twilight Saga: Breaking Dawn, continuing the streak of the Twilight movies winning this. I believe next year breaks the streak. We'll get into the drama around that if I'm remembering correctly.
Drama. All right. Well, why don't we start off with our number fives then?
Yeah, my number 5 here, not one that I think most people have heard of or are aware of at all. This is The Wise Kids, written and directed by Stephen Cohn, who is not a super well-known filmmaker, but one of my absolute favorites. I think his films really capture a specific sense of the world. Yeah, this is about 3 South Carolina teenagers in their final semester of high school, and they're trying to figure out where they do or don't fit in relative to their conservative Christian community. I saw this my first semester of university and found it like incredibly relatable, just because I was in the same stage of my life and thinking about a lot of the same things that these characters are thinking about. Um, I did rewatch it a few weeks ago just to like see if it held up, and I didn't, it didn't hit the same, but it is still incredibly well made. And for anyone who is in that period of life or is curious about like what that feels like, I think this is really really well made. It's very observational. It's a sort of slower paced movie. There aren't a whole lot of like big scenes or big moments. It's mainly just watching these characters and the people they interact with and the conversations they're having. Um, and yeah, it has a lot of empathy in how it approaches all of its various different characters. There aren't any clear villains, or I mean, any villains really at all, though certain characters do questionable things. But yeah, it's just observing these characters and the community they grew up in a way that, like, even though I didn't grow up in the South, I did grow up in a sort of similar community, so it felt very familiar to me.
You know me. I've not seen or heard this, so
Added to my watch list. My number 5, I will. My little preface, I will say, I didn't go so hard in watching movies from this year as I wanted to, but at the same time, I don't have regrets with saying that my number 5 is Thor. I haven't seen it in a bit, so I'm going off, memory from a few years ago. What I do remember is it's fun, um, and honestly, if I'm being honest, that's kind of all I really ask for from superhero movies. It's been like this month we've had Superman and Fantastic Four release, and I enjoyed discourse for sure, but I think especially with Superman, there's just a lot of discourse that's related to Snyder versus Gunn kind of stuff, and I'm kind of just like, I enjoyed Gunn Superman. Like, it's fine to talk deep,
Yeah.
but it's also not that deep, I guess. And so I feel like I come with a similar approach with Thor. I recall having fun. There are things about it I don't love, honest. And as we know from a technical level, the Dutch angles are overkill, way too overkill. But as a movie, I remember having fun. I mean, you know, a, an alien on Earth who gets hit by a car. Are you kidding me? That's hilarious. It's peak comedy right there. Kills me.
yeah, yeah.
Um, and yeah, so I find it entertaining, and that's really all I have to say about it. I bet maybe if I rewatch it, maybe I'd be a little more critical, and I'm fine with being critical, but also like from my recollection, I find this movie fun, and I'm not afraid to say that.
Yeah, this is directed by Kenneth Branagh, who of course is very well known for his Shakespeare adaptations and sort of the Shakespearean trained actor. And you do very much get that with sort of the style, especially the Asgard scenes. The way they're written and performed feels very play or theater like, very formal language. Which then, yeah, once Thor gets dropped into Earth, you have that contrasted with like the modern, more what you would expect from a superhero movie. Um, and yeah, I remember that being fun. And I haven't seen this in a while. I actually, the last time I saw this, I believe, was for a university class that I was taking on directing for stage and screen, and the professor was a big fan of this film specifically for its direction.
Hmm.
Um, so I found that interesting because yeah, this is like on the one hand, this is a Marvel movie that fits within that big tapestry of like popular art, but then there is something interesting and different about it compared to everything else. That Shakespearean aspect to it, that more theatrical sensibility. Um, I do also. This is one. Um, I was 12 when this came out, and my parents were pretty strict on what I could watch, like PG-13 wise.
Hmm.
Um, but somehow my mom had convinced herself that this movie was PG, and
Amazing.
my older sister and I just never really corrected her. So she took us and my younger sister to see it in the theater, thinking it was PG when it was actually PG-13, and my younger sister would have been like, I don't know, 5 or 6, um, not watching PG-13 movies. So this is like an intense movie, especially when you're in the theater. So we get out, and my mom was super worried about like, oh, was this too intense for her? And she asked her, "Are you okay? What did you think of the movie? Was it too scary?" And my sister said, "No, I thought it was sad because all of those people lost their houses."
Aw.
Like, oh, she was. That's not something that the movie is highlighting. But yeah, there is this destruction in the final act that's what stood out to her most.
You know what? I can't lie. Actually, that's one thing that kind of makes me upset with like superhero movies. Is
Yeah.
just like the casual destruction of towns and cities. So I can't lie, I do sympathize.
Oh yeah, no,
Like,
that is like eventually you kind of start to get desensitized to it, but that is, she was watching this not having seen a whole lot of those types of movies, so that being her takeaway is, yeah.
I remember going through the MCU with my brother for his first time and just really noting like how many of those movies are set in New York, and then how many times just either something super odd happens in New York, specifically like Infinity War. That one was just odd events. But then
Yeah.
other movies it's just like massive destruction. So virtually every single movie, I'm not that it sounds funny, but I would kind of just joke like, don't move to New York. You don't want to live in New
Yeah.
York with just like
Yeah.
each movie. And I think with that, I kind of like created this like kind of like sympathy about like the environment where I've just uh become frustrated, I guess, sometimes seeing it,
Yeah.
I
And I
guess.
mean, what's interesting about the MCU is they have kind of gone on to address that in certain ways. Spider-Man Homecoming has the cleanup from the Battle of New York is a very important part of that. And I think in Hawkeye, the TV show, there's some stuff about that as well, sort of the collateral damage that we don't see in the movie
Mhm.
itself. But yeah, that is sort of a consistent thing with these superhero movies, that like we haven't gone back to the small town in New Mexico where Thor takes place to check in on if the people of that town are okay, if their insurance covered their houses being destroyed by a space robot,
Mhm.
or what's going on with that.
Yeah, I remember back when there was like maybe only 5 or 6 MCU film that Thor was probably like at the bottom of that list for me. Back then especially, I don't know, the Thor films just weren't my favorite. I think in retrospect, I enjoy them better now than I did back then. So yeah, it's a genre. Its style that it's going for isn't my favorite, but it looking back, it's a fine film. All right, well, moving on to my number 5, we have a DC animated film called Batman Year One. Don't let that title fool you. It may be called Batman, but this is actually a James Gordon film. It's a
Oh.
pretty good James Gordon film. It's only an hour long, um, telling the events of Batman's first year. So Bruce Wayne returns to Gotham, and over the course of the film, you see him slowly develop his Batman persona. But it's more so about this Gordon coming to Gotham, trying to raise a family in a corrupt city. Um, yeah, this might be the best animation out of all of these DC animated
Oh,
films. Uh, they definitely put in the effort on this one, and it's all downhill from here, essentially. um,
yeah. I've seen clips of some of the more recent ones. It's like, oh, that's unfortunate.
yeah. But yeah, it's a James Gordon film with a sprinkle of Batman and Catwoman. Um, there's a lot of visuals from this and the original comic that makes up a third of Batman Begins. There's a lot of moments when
Yeah,
when watching this film, I'm like, oh yeah, I remember when that was depicted in Batman Begins. That's pretty cool. Gordon himself is voiced by Bryan Cranston, which is pretty cool.
oh, that's good
Yeah,
casting. Yeah,
it is good casting. Waiting for that live action casting, you know.
yeah,
Yeah, I think I'll leave it there.
yeah. I have read the comic, but I haven't seen this movie. I don't remember if it focused on James Gordon, but I wouldn't be surprised. It's been many years since I read the comic.
Hmm.
Yeah, this is one that I would eventually like to watch more of the DC animated movies than what I've seen. So this is definitely one that is on my list to get around to eventually.
Yeah, it's only an hour long. It's pretty short, so it's a simple ride.
Yeah, my number 4 is a little movie called Weekend. This one is probably more well known than my first or my number 5 pick, mainly because it's in the Criterion collection, but it is sort of on a similar lower budget, lower stakes. This is directed by Andrew Haigh, who most recently people might know for All of Us Strangers. And this is actually kind of similar, more so in setting and certain character details than anything else. But it follows a 3-day relationship over a weekend, as the title would suggest, between two men who are living in this city in England. This is very similar in certain ways to like the mumblecore movement in the US, but I want to make it clear that like it is also very different for because I think mumblecore is often used sort of pejoratively. Um, but yeah, it's this grounded look into the lives of these two young men. Um, just this sort of very simple 3-day relationship that they have, and what I really appreciate about it is the restraint and maturity and how it depicts this central relationship. Like it is romantic, but it is restrained by the short time frame. This isn't one of those. This is not a Romeo and Juliet type story. This isn't love at first sight. It's two adults experiencing a connection and handling it in a mature way. That, yeah, it just feels very different from any romance film that I have seen, at least that I can think of off the top of my head. I do have a couple issues. I don't love the way it depicts hard drug use. And it also, like, on rewatch, it didn't work quite as well for me as it did the first time around. But it is, I mean, it is still excellent. And that first watch was something really special. And it's just like a very gorgeous film. The cinematography is so good, and they based it off of photographs of this real life couple that, yeah, just it has such a lived in aesthetic that is really nice. And yeah, the Criterion Blu-ray is excellent and has some good features if people are looking to collect those.
You know me.
I like the weekend concept, so that's intriguing to me. All right, then my number 4 is a movie from I believe Norway called Headhunters. Um, this man, he steals paintings to fund his lavish lifestyle, and it follows one certain occasion, which you can kind of guess if there's a whole movie based off it. It probably doesn't go super smoothly. So, um, yeah, it's a ride. Um, it's well done. It's enjoyable, and um, yeah. Again, I don't love giving a lot of details, so that's just like the very base level. So, um, There's some layers to it that I enjoyed. There's some enjoyment to be had if you like these kinds of things. It being a European film, there's a couple of images that are just off the charts graphic compared to like the rest of the movie. Or there's some like there's one concept that kind of happens, um, and is a thing. Um, Again, I would probably talk more casually to someone who's seen it and give more details. I don't want to spoil things.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is what it is. It's enjoyable.
Now, I just checked on Wikipedia and they have this interesting tidbit. It is the highest grossing Norwegian film in history.
Therefore, you know it's good.
Yep.
That's not the proper metric, but like I recommend it personally. Like if you can deal with some over the top imagery, and it's brief stuff virtually, but it is over the top. I feel like okay, so like if you look at like sound waves, like a lot of songs today are like compressed. It's like just tight. But uncompressed, there's higher highs and lower lows. I feel like a lot of American movies are very compressed, and maybe more international films with different standards could be, more uncompressed. So there are just some moments that are just like you just wouldn't expect as much, I guess. And so, sorry, that's just a thought I had.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm. And you know me, I have not seen or heard this, so yeah. But moving on to my number 4, to a film I have seen and heard, I have Super 8, one of J.J. Abrams. Actually, it is J.J. Abrams' only standalone film, not related to any franchise at the time of this recording. So yeah, it's a film. J.J. made a film like kind of being nostalgic about his childhood in the pre-80s. So it's about this group of kids who are trying to make their own little movie using their Super 8 cameras. Um, but there's like this whole sci-fi mystery going on in the background. It's also about this kid who's still grieving the loss of his mother, and there's some like family relationship drama. Cool stuff happens. This is a film that has a lot of similar style, more of like a diet toned down style precursor to Stranger Things, set close to that time period. So some visual and musical nostalgia to that when Stranger Things first came out, I was like, oh, that reminds me a whole lot about Super 8. And now Super 8 just feels like this forgotten thing from 2011. I enjoy it when this came out. I wish J.J. Abrams would just do more of his own stuff than just continuing to be the franchise guy. Um, it's very it's very overly emotional in like that classic Spielberg way, but I think it's pretty solid.
Yeah, you bring up Steven Spielberg, and I think this is important to note with this one specifically that it is an Amblin production, and Steven Spielberg is like very prominently featured as a producer here. I remember
Yeah.
seeing his name in all of the marketing material because part of this is like I saw this month for this podcast, and having seen the Fablemans, the number of connections between this and the Fablemans is fascinating to me because this isn't a Steven Spielberg film, but it feels like it is playing with a lot of the same ideas. Like if you took the Fablemans and put it in a blender with like E.T. and maybe Close Encounters of the Third Kind, you would end up with Super 8, even though Super 8 comes before the Fablemans.
Mm-hmm.
Just like the prominence of the train crash and the Super 8 as like a medium that they're working in. Um, yeah, for me, I didn't love this. I think it has a lot of interesting stuff in it, and like early role for Elle Fanning, if you're a fan of hers, it does really capture that Amblin feel, but for me, it just doesn't have the same like magic to it that a lot of the Spielberg films have. And I initially J.J. Abrams had like two separate ideas. One was an alien movie, one was sort of a childhood movie, and then he mashed them together. I kind of feel like maybe it would have worked better if they were still two separate films. I don't know if they mix super well for me. But yeah, I also imagine if I had seen this at a younger age, I would feel more fondly towards it.
Sure. Yeah. I saw it when it came out, and that's probably speaking towards nostalgia. But yeah, it's one that probably hasn't aged the same way as other stuff, but sure.
Yeah, I feel like if someone were asking me, do I watch Super 8 or do I watch The Fablemans and E.T., I would say watch The Fablemans and E.T., and you will get a better experience overall. But I mean, there is still a lot to like with Super 8. And like I said, it really captures the aesthetic and the feel of those Amblin movies from the
Mm-hmm.
80s.
Yeah.
I think this has been a movie John's been trying to get me to watch for a while. Is that right?
Has it?
I don't know. It just feels like one of those.
I don't recall ever bringing it up to you.
Okay, my bad.
Okay. I think Cloverfield is what I was saying.
They're the same in my head, I guess.
They are similar. They have similarities. I think now that you bring it up, I am like, oh yeah, I think as a kid I kind of smushed them together.
Look at the poster alone is very similar.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. The camera.
Anyway, moving on.
Yeah. It's my turn, I guess. Yeah, my number 3 is another little movie you may not have heard of called X-Men First Class. This is, of course, directed by Matthew Vaughn, and the X-Men movies had gotten a bit of a bad reputation post The Last Stand and Origins Wolverine. So 20th Century Fox decided to do this prequel that ended up also being like a soft reboot. Timeline stuff is complicated. Doesn't matter. This is set in the 1960s, and we follow Charles Xavier and Eric Lensher, who bring together a team of superpowered mutants to stop a big bad from destroying the world. Um, Typical X-Men stuff, but we're sort of seeing the origins of the team. And what makes this really special is the characters. We have Charles and Eric, who in the comics have always been framed as these like rivals who were once friends. And here we're actually getting to see the friendship before the rivalry. We're seeing what brings them together, their similarities, but we're also seeing like their different backgrounds and their different ideologies that eventually lead to this falling out between the two. Both played wonderfully. We have James McAvoy and Michael Fassbender in the roles, and they do incredible work here. This is also just like a really fun superhero team movie. We have some really fun set pieces, some incredible like character designs. The makeup on certain characters is pretty good. They're bringing back like the yellow suits, which they had gotten rid of for the dark and gritty feel of the early 2000s ones that they were going for. But no, here they have the bright yellow. Kevin Bacon is in this. He's really fun. This also just has like a really great supporting cast of young people who would go on to become big stars in their own right. Jennifer Lawrence, Nicholas Hoult, Zoe Kravitz, Caleb Landry Jones, and then more recently Eddie Gathegi, who was in the new Superman and was sort of a breakout star of that one. So yeah, I don't know. This one just speaks to me like the way it is approaching the mythology, the X-Men mythology is maybe my favorite of them since X2, which X2 is like my high water mark for X-Men movies. But this one is doing a similar thing of having this character focused drama, these different ideologies that are clashing. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Also, like the theme they have for Magneto in this is so good. I think it's
Yeah.
called like Frankenstein's Monster, and it hits. It's so good.
Christopher.
Uh, okay. Um, well, first, just one observational thing, because like the original X Men trilogy, like so much focus was Wolverine. So, kind of interesting that they took a leap of not a Wolverine X Men movie basically. So,
Yeah.
um, I've only seen this once when I went through the X Men movies in prep for Multiverse of Madness. It didn't work for me, and I remember I watched it with a friend, um, so it didn't work for us. But then he eventually kind of like revisited it a little bit, and also kind of like just seeing like how people feel about the movie, and he was like, okay, I guess for him it was more like he expected a certain something, and it's just not that. So he was kind of able to appreciate it for what it was. So I'm willing to revisit it in the future with a more open heart. Uh, but yeah, not super crazy about it, but also I don't really have necessarily anything critical to say because again, that was kind of before my more, you know, cinephilic days. So I have, uh, while I don't think of it positively, I'm not going to say anything positive or negative about it because I don't necessarily think what I feel really is valid. I'd say.
I mean, it's valid, but yeah, I understand where like yeah, you maybe want to give it a second chance before say anything too critical. And I will
Yeah.
say like this is somewhat disagreed upon. I know people who really like this one the way I do, and I know some people who really dislike it, including I have a friend who's a very big X Men fan, like reads the comics monthly as they come out, X Men fan, and I don't think he's particularly a fan of this one. Um, yeah, for me, this just works the way it is approaching the characters and the ideological discussion really works. But yeah, this is also like this movie has a brief cameo from Wolverine, but besides that, he's not in this. Um, Cyclops isn't in this. Jean Grey isn't in this. If you like the X Men movies for those characters, they are not here.
Yeah. I remember that when I watched this when this first came out, I wasn't really a big fan of it. I think my big point of contention about it was just the convoluted timeline that this brought up, which, whatever. But over the years, the next decade and a half, once more X Men films came out with these characters, I would revisit this one. I think it's grown on me since then, and there have been much worse X Men films have come out since then. So, um, yeah, that's what I'll say.
I think
Yeah.
I should also say I think this might actually be the first X Men movie that I saw. I don't know
Mm.
for sure, but yeah, we had some friends who had like an apartment on the beach that they would rent out to people, and they had a big DVD collection, and this was one in their DVD collection that I remember watching. So I think that was before I had even bought the original trilogy on DVD and watched those. So that might partially be influencing my thoughts here.
Yeah. Yeah. Moving on.
Yay. Uh, this movie is called Silenced. This movie is based off a true story um, about um, kids who were sexually abused. And so it's a very heavy film. Um, and I knew about this movie for a few years. And so coming into this month, preparing for watching movies for this year, I kind of wanted to watch it. Um, I think has like a 4.1 on Letterboxd, so kind of thing. And yeah, it's heavy. I cried twice for sure. So it's there. It's well done. It's effective. Um, yeah, heavy movie. Really, I think my main point of contention with this movie is that it's very graphic. It's not it like it's so it's right at the line. But at the same time it's still like is graphic basically. So it's like very graphic but not obscenely graphic basically. And I guess there were moments while watching this movie where I was surprised how far they went, and it would take me out of the movie because there are child actors involved in this movie. And I've not really done any research. The Wikipedia article doesn't say anything. I've not looked at Korea's Namu Wiki yet to see if that has more details about this, like how it was filmed. I think considering Korea versus America, I do wonder if there were less protocols. But I hope that due to the heavy subject matter, that they were more serious about protocols. Who knows? I don't know. All I'll say is like it's graphic enough that I was thinking more about who I was seeing as actors than the story that was portrayed, I guess. And so therefore, if such images are disturbing enough for you, then I would suggest staying away. Um, yeah, but it's a well done movie, and it seems like I believe there's always work that can be done, but it has inspired some positive change. So I bet that's what this movie wanted to try to accomplish, and it seems like it has accomplished some of that. So that's really good and cool, and I hope it will continue to do so if it is able to do so. Um, your fun fact about this movie is that it is from the director of Squid Game.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. I had not heard of this one before. But yeah, looking at the Wikipedia article, it looks like this was both influential as a film and influential in the wider Korean society. So that is interesting. I do know there is a lot of debate about how to depict certain things on film. So I would be curious what the conversation around this one looks like specifically in regards to that. A conversation that may be coming up later, though
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
not nearly as heavily.
Yeah. And again, just specifically, I think it's one thing for like what is depicted in film, but another thing is like who's involved? How did
Yeah,
you involve
yeah,
them? What were the protocols? And so specifically, children being sexually abused. Like how do you approach that?
yeah,
And this
yeah.
this movie kind of visually went all in, but I don't know. I feel very mixed about it. Um,
Yeah.
but I think like why I say mixed. I think it's very clear what distresses me, but at the end of the day, the movie is effective and it has led to positive change. So it's hard to say that I don't think the movie shouldn't exist, but it's more like was the approach right? I don't
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
but
yeah. How much do you need to show in order for it to be effective? I mean,
exactly.
there is an active debate around that, and I don't think there is an easy or simple answer.
Yeah. So yeah, I probably would have liked a little less show personally. And I still think, especially with Korean movies or Asian cinema in a general sense, I feel like they do lean into emotionalism as it is. Maybe should they have just leaned more into emotionalism? Because I do think the movie is just emotional as it is. Were the graphic images was that what sent me over the edge? I don't think so. I think it took me out of it. I think just the whole situation as it is just emotional, and I personally, I think it still would have been just as effective with a few less images. Because also, like you see like how the children are affected from the situation, and
Yeah.
as horrible as the situations are, I think the consequences of how the children react are probably more impactful, I guess.
Or more sort of emotionally effective in terms of
Yeah,
communicating the distress.
yeah.
Yeah, again,
Because
I
again,
haven't seen it, so I'm just
right. Just like
speculating.
it may feel good to punch someone in the face, but then like you have to deal with the consequences. Oh, someone's face is punched, and what does that journey look like to heal from that? It's a I don't know. It's a very touchy topic, but I guess
Yeah,
like
yeah.
kind of because again, like people do bad things because it's pleasurable for them, but do they really consider how they're hurting the other people? Most every time, no. Basically, is I guess what I'm saying, and so like that journey of processing and healing and the pain, I guess, is I think what truly makes this effective, in my opinion. And it's not so much seeing the pain occur; it's the effects of the pain.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
you know me, haven't seen or heard of it. But moving on to my number three, in a complete opposite direction, we have uh, Rise of the Planet of the Apes, the beginning of this ape trilogy. Probably the best trilogy to come out of the 2010s. Debatable. Um,
It's a
but
sleeper choice. Yeah, the
yeah,
surprisingly consistent in terms of quality.
yeah. So yeah, this was the first entry of that trilogy. Here we get to see, as the title suggests, the rise of the journey that's going to happen, uh, where we follow Caesar learning his intelligence and bringing up this new order. This is the film that kind of got me into the Planet of the Apes franchise. I before this I had seen the Tim Burton one that didn't really stick with me too much, but this is the one that kind of got me hooked. That led me to watch the original films. Um, it's a solid film that gets so massively overshadowed by the two sequels that just are at a whole nother level in quality wise. But this is a good starter to a trilogy. So yeah.
Yeah, I haven't seen this one. I think I only ever saw it once when I was quite a bit younger. It is interesting. Actually, now that I think about it, I don't think I have rewatched any of the Planet of the Apes movies that I have seen. But there's a new one every few years, and they're always good. They always do decently at the box office. Like this is for a franchise that doesn't tend to come up a whole lot in terms of bigger franchise movie discussions. This is a very consistently solid one. And yeah, I remember liking this one. This obviously we have Andy Serkis putting in an incredible performance here. His motion capture, as always, is just very, very good. Um, and yeah, as you were saying, this is the start of this trilogy it feels like it is pulling not stylistically but just sort of in what it is doing, pulling from Batman Begins in terms of, hey, here can we establish a more grounded in realism base to then build off of for future installments. um, and obviously this is just on a basic level a bit more out there than even Batman, but I think they do a really good job with the realism here and bringing emotion and feeling towards these characters. Yeah,
Yeah.
is Caesar a character in any of the prior Planet of the Apes movies?
Yeah. Caesar
Okay,
was part of the fourth and fifth film in the original films. But
yeah,
um I do think that it was a great choice to make Caesar the sort of protagonist of this trilogy, and especially this film.
Yeah,
Like, it's a big risk for having your main character being the CGI character, especially at this time period, but they just
yeah,
nail perfectly.
yeah. And it is interesting that like he's probably the character from the Planet of the Apes franchise that is most iconic. And that
Hmm.
he is this sort of late addition that then even like the most iconic version of him is this version in the remakes, that he has sort of the empathy that Andy Serkis and the team behind the animation and the mocap performance and everything here are bringing to this character has really resonated beyond.
I'm positive that that's actually a film that John's been wanting me to watch.
I know for a fact that it's on your
It's on
uh,
that list.
watch list, so yeah. One day.
John made me a watch list as I was getting into movies, and um, and then I completely went on my own path, basically. So I do want to go through those movies, though.
Yeah. I would say like, and I mean, John, you know more about this than I do, but this is maybe even a better place to start with the Planet of the Apes movies than the original movies, and obviously more than the Tim Burton movie. Um, yeah,
Sure.
yeah. They didn't teach actual monkeys to ride horses for this one the way they did for the original movie, as iconically was pointed out in Shang-Chi. But
Yeah.
anyway, that doesn't have anything to do with anything. My number two movie is a little movie called. I keep describing these as little movies. I shouldn't. That joke has been overdone. Hannah. This is directed by Joe Wright, written by David Farr and Seth Lockhead, and the basic premise here is: what if Jason Bourne was a young girl played by Saoirse Ronan? Um, it's this espionage type action global thriller, all of those words, sort of a little bit more grounded than like a corny 90s James Bond movie would be. But yeah, it's, Saoirse Ronan as a, I think she's 13 or 14 when she makes this, but she reads even younger than that. um as a star of an action movie, and Kate Blanchett plays the CIA handler who has been tasked with chasing her across the globe. And yeah, this is an action thriller meets coming of age drama. We have Hannah is trying to figure out who she is. She was raised sort of in the wilderness by her ex CIA father, um, and is just now coming into society and trying to figure out where she fits in, and learning about art and culture and music, as she is also, fighting for her survival and trying to evade capture. Um, it's the rare globetrotting adventure that is actually interested in the various cultures that the character is trotting through. It takes a lot of time to actually like look at the people and especially the music. The music is something that keeps coming back. Um, it's also just like really, really smartly written. We have a lot of allusions to fairy tales that keep popping up in very clever ways that I enjoyed. The inciting incident of this, because so many movies like this start with person hiding out in a cabin deep in the wilderness, and oh no, the CIA has found them, and now they have to go on the run from this sort of idyllic life that they have set up for themselves in the wilderness. In this one, it is actually an active choice that Hannah makes to go out into the world, knowing that she will have to fight her way and evade capture. Um, and yeah, that's just so smart to me, as this like making that choice an intentional one and tying it in with this young girl's sort of coming of age journey. It's so good. This also has an incredible soundtrack from the Chemical Brothers. Just I mean, it reminds me a lot of Tron Legacy, the sort of electronic score, though with like a lot more grit to it. But then it's also like the visuals here are so gorgeous. they're very muted, but with very specific pops of color for costuming or hair, or like Hannah's eyes are like bright blue. It never feels drab. And where most action movies are trying to be either like sleek like the James Bond movies or more gritty like the Jason Bourne movies, Hannah feels almost like painterly. Like every shot composition feels so intentional about where things are placed and where characters are blocked. And yeah, it extends to how it approaches the emotional journey that Hannah goes on. That it's being very intentional and very, it has a weirdly light touch, while still like the action is still very exciting and the thriller elements are still very thrilling. Um, yeah, this is just such an odd one that worked so well with my sensibilities that I couldn't help but love it. This might, on a rewatch, even jump up to be my favorite of the year. I don't know. I I have some friends who I need to watch this with, who I think that experience of watching it with them might bring this even higher on my list. Are you
You
at
know
least
me.
familiar with this one?
No.
I feel
Oh,
like it made certain waves when it came out.
Don't know about it.
sounds interesting.
Yeah, I highly recommend it. I mean, it's Kate Blanchett as the villain, and it's a Jason Bourne type movie, but yeah, Saoirse Ronan at the center. You might think that like having a little girl doing action scenes would be unconvincing, but I think they do actually do a very good job of like selling the physicality of it. Um, yeah, and there's like plot related reasons that she is able to dispatch with fully grown men, but I think it works even without that.
Hmm.
It sells the physics of it. And yeah, it's also just like it's beautiful, which is not something I could say about like the Jason Bourne movies. As much as I love those, there aren't very many moments of beauty in those in the way that Hannah has.
I guess like I tell people like there's over like 3,000 movies in my watch list, and they're just like mind blown. I'm just like, it's not the fact that I hope to watch all these movies before I die. It's just that they sound interesting or they're recommended to me, and then if I get
Yeah,
around to them, especially with like the letterbox like filtering searches, like especially like approaching a month, be like, all right, what do I have in my watch list for 2011? See, what's on my services, kind of thing. Kind of chunk through
yeah.
movies that way. Like it. That's all it is. It's an aid. um, my number two movie is a South Korean movie called Always, and this is sorry, looking at the posters that made me laugh. Um, the female lead is blind.
Okay, that's
Sorry,
yeah,
just seeing
very
that in the
literal way
poster.
of displaying that
Yeah,
in the
that's very. Oh
poster.
my gosh, that's actually pretty funny. But yeah, it's a romance movie with a blind female lead. So again, it's just a unique wrench to throw in your quote stereotypical romance movie, and I really like it. So if you like romance movies and you want a unique element, here you go. That's all I really have. There is a Japanese remake that I haven't seen yet called, I think it's called Your Eyes Tell, and if you love BTS, BTS did a song for that one.
Oh,
Um, my roommate, he's seen both versions, so he could probably give like how this one does better, how that one does better, or whatever. I think like the endings are slightly different. I think he said. Um, I think one thing I don't love about this one is I think the male lead is a little too emotionless. I guess. Um, I think my roommate said the Japanese lead is a little evokes a little more emotion, but I think my roommate, uh, his opinion, I think he says overall he does prefer the Korean one. I forget exactly, but I hope to watch the Japanese remake one day, just out of curiosity. But yeah, I personally really like this one.
yeah. Yeah, I hadn't ever heard of this one before. I will remark that when I saw this on your list, I got really excited for a second because I
Yeah.
read it as Away, the Gin Seal the Lotus film that John and
Yeah,
I recently watched for binging Barbie, the episode of that will be up on Patreon, in which I think I loved it, and I think I could say that John also really, really liked it.
Oh,
I
that's
did.
awesome.
Yeah, yeah.
That's really cool.
But yeah, I don't have anything to add about Always, which is also the title of a Steven Spielberg movie that is not my favorite of his.
Yeah, no, it's not his best work. Yeah, you know me. I haven't heard or seen this one, although before the podcast, Jay and I were just looking at the poster here and trying to determine like what the story was, and we deemed
Did you
it
guys
as a
get the
little
blind
more.
part?
We deemed it as a little more sinister, of like the way the guy is looking and how he's covering the girl's eyes. It's like it's a evil relationship.
That's kind of funny. Yeah, no, he just doesn't know how to emote, and she's blind. That's all it is.
Normal romance.
Normal romance,
Yeah,
but at the end of the day, he loves her, and that's
That's
what's
the
most
important
important.
part. Yeah.
that's good to know.
Yeah,
Um,
I don't remember all the details of the romance, but yeah, he loves her. That
yeah. Moving on to my number 2, we have the final film of the Harry Potter installment. So that's Harry Potter 8, The Deathly Hallows Part 2. Last month I said I didn't love the first one because I thought it was boring. This one has all the excitement. So yeah, it's action packed. It's the emotional crux of like the whole franchise. There's twists and turns, reveals that change your perspective of characters. Um, Sad stuff happens. Great stuff happens, debatably. But the best part is there's no more after this. um,
Well, now there's the show,
yeah, not
which is
just
a
the show.
sequel, but is
Sure.
more. And I guess the Fantastic Beasts
And
movies,
the
if you
play,
care where to
the
find
stage
them.
play. So, But anyway, yeah, no, this was enjoyable. It's not my favorite of the franchise, but it is, again, because there's a lot of like big stuff. It's the climax of the whole thing. There's stuff to get out of it. So yeah,
I have not seen this recently enough to make any declarative statements about it. Um, I remember liking it when I saw it younger. I have talked in other episodes about my feelings about other Harry Potter movies, so people can go back to other years and look at those. Yeah,
yeah. Enough said.
enough said. Well, yeah, my honorable mentions here. I'm going to try and move through these quickly. Number one, I have, or I guess this isn't number one because I have organized these alphabetically as I have been doing the last few episodes. So, first up, Adventures of Tintin. This is Steven Spielberg and Peter Jackson team up to adapt the iconic comic book character into a mocap film. It's Indiana Jones with a younger protagonist and a dash of Looney Tunes madness. I saw this as a kid in the theater and loved it, and I have since seen it multiple times and really enjoyed it. I had like such a huge crush on Tintin as a kid. He's just like he's a competent reporter, cute as a button. Yeah, this is a fun movie. Um, I also have Contagion, the Steven Soderbergh film. This follows various characters throughout a global pandemic as they
Whoa.
respond to different things. Like everyone else, I watched this in 2020 and it holds up very well to what happens in real life when this stuff happens. It's fascinating. It is heavier. It maybe brings up emotions that people don't want to explore, but I thought it was interesting, and it has like a phenomenal cast. So many actors coming in and doing just like very small roles, but very well. Um, then I have Fright Night, the remake of the classic vampire movie, which is good schlocky fun, and like if you are the type of person who will like this movie, I can sell you on this movie by saying it has Colin Farrell as a sexy vampire, David Tennant as a sexy vampire hunter, and Anton Yelchin is sort of caught between the two of them. Um, yeah, just ton of fun. Then I have Martin Scorsese's Hugo, which is his one kids movie that he has made. I haven't seen it since I was younger. I do have the Arrow Blu-ray of it, so I am going to watch it at some point again. And yeah, it's just this testament to the beauty of cinema. Very interesting film from Scorsese. I also have Pariah on my list here. Dee Reese's, I believe, her debut. Follows a black lesbian high schooler who is balancing her identity with the expectations of her conservative family. It is deeply empathetic towards all of the various characters in this, has some really gorgeous lighting, just incredible. Like the use of color is so good here. Brings to mind Moonlight, and also sort of thematically has some resonance. There's one scene early on where the central character is on a bus home from the this lesbian club that she is at, and as she like takes off her more masculine clothes and puts on sort of a more feminine appearance, like just completely silent, such a profound moment of expressing this character's identity. um yeah, really good. Also has a Criterion that is pretty solid. Priest, completely opposite end of the spectrum. This is just pure dumb fun. It's a cyberpunk vampire western. Paul Bettany, Maggie Q killing vampires, Carl Urban wearing a really great hat. A lot of fun. 85 minutes long. Just vampire cyberpunk western goodness. Speaking of vampires, I have Breaking Dawn, Twilight Saga, Breaking Dawn Part 1. This one brings in sort of these campy sensibilities. We have Bill Condon joining as director here. Brings in a whole lot of really great elements. This also spends a full hour on Bella's wedding and honeymoon, which is just so good. The payoff to everything that it has been building up, it works so well. And then we get like this really gnarly pregnancy and birth stuff. Like the screams in the theater when I saw this at a rep screening were so much fun. Um, this is also the one that introduces Renesmee and the imprinting, and again, the audience reactions to that were just phenomenal. If you can see this one with a crowd, it is very much worth it. And then last up, I have Young Adult. This is Jason Reitman and Diablo Cody teaming up again after Juno. And in this one, it's a very different film. Charlize Theron plays an absolutely horrible person who returns to her hometown for her high school ex's baby shower, planning to break up his marriage. Um, your mileage may vary on this one. It has absolutely no interest in redeeming this central character, just presenting her as she is, this mess of a person. And it's such a fascinating character study, and also like a really good portrayal of suburban USA. Like at one point she goes to a sports bar, and I was like, I have been to that sports bar. Like not literally that sports bar, but just the visuals of it and the design of it and everything. I mean, obviously it's a real sports bar that they're filming in, but it just really captures that feeling while also presenting this like fascinating but also very flawed character. John, you've seen some of these.
I have seen one of these. I have only seen The Adventures of Tintin, which, again, I saw in the theaters back when it came out. I really liked it. It got me to purchase like the first season of the classic Tintin TV show on DVD, which was fun. Um, I've rewatched it a few times since then. I always enjoy watching it. It's a very underrated film. Um, I think just phenomenal camera work and animation. There's like a oneer,
Yeah.
this fantastic oneer that's so over the top and fun, and even the
Yeah.
transitions are great as well. Yeah, yeah. It is the
Yeah,
best.
Oh.
It is the best of that era of filmmaking that tries to mocap everything. So
Yeah, and this is different than because the Robert Zemeckis Image Movers ones have a very uncanny valley feel, which I never got with this one. Though then
Mhm.
again, I did like have a big crush on Tintin, so that was I was paying attention to different things when I
Sure.
was watching this.
Yeah, I didn't quite have that same relationship with Tintin. Um, But yeah, no, it's a pretty cool one. I I kind of always wanted a sequel, and perhaps a little too late for one
Yeah,
now. But
I hope
yeah,
that the idea was that Spielberg was going to direct the first one and then Jackson was going to direct the second one, and then they never got around to the second one. I hope they do eventually, but I mean, Peter Jackson has other things that he wants to focus on right now after the fiascos of the Hobbit movies. But that's a conversation for a different day.
yeah, different month.
I haven't seen any of those, so my honorable mentions are not every single movie I've seen from 2011, but a handful of them. Ryan Gosling stars in a movie called Drive. It's well done. I'm not completely in love with it like a lot of people are, but The Day He Arrives is my first movie from director Hong Sang-soo. Um, he's I don't know what you know about Korean cinema, but he's definitely kind of the most popular kind of art house director. At this point, he's releasing like 3 films a year, basically. The kind of joke is like if he goes on a walk, he's just gonna film it, basically. um, so, but it kind of does have that like just like very not. I don't want to say low quality, but just very like tangible feel,
Mm.
daily feel. Um, I think my surprise with The Day He Arrives is how layered the storytelling actually is. Because I think there's also I've probably heard maybe people saying like how spontaneous his movies can be. Like there's one movie that like when they started filming, I think it was like accidentally out of focus. And then bro's like, you know what? I'm just gonna film this whole movie out of focus. But that
Why
movie's
not?
called In Water. Um, so I guess I was shocked how layered the storytelling in The Day He Arrives was. So, and also a handful of people were saying it was a good introduction to his films. I personally picked this one because I ordered it to, start watching some of his movies eventually. And out of like, there's a handful of his movies that are released on Blu ray in America, but not this one. So I imported this from South Korea. I bet it's available probably on Canopy or something. Um, but I like my physical media. Um, Attack the Block, um, fine movie. I am not the biggest kind of guy who's like trying to look for aliens invading a city kind of movie. Um, but there are definitely aspects of this movie I did like quite a bit. Um, so yeah, not necessarily my kind of genre film, but I do appreciate what it is. I see people really do like it, and yeah, I think that's cool. Sherlock Holmes, Game of Shadows. I like Robert Downey Jr. I enjoyed the first one. I don't think I like this one as much, but it's still enjoyable. No Strings Attached. You know, I like my romance movies, so gotta throw an American romance movie in occasionally. Um, but I definitely do feel like I'm a fan of Natalie Portman. So, kind of interesting string of movies. She was in Thor, No Strings Attached, and Black Swan.
Yeah,
I think, despite Black Swan being released first, I think she filmed No Strings Attached first. I think that's where I recall reading. I don't remember.
that would
Um,
make sense. I would
yeah,
imagine that.
yeah. I wonder where Thor was in the mix of all that.
Yeah.
Probably, if I had to guess, maybe it was after Black Swan. I don't know. Um, I, You know what? There was no logic to that guess. That made no sense. Forget I ever said that. You can leave it in. Um, Speaking of um, actresses I watched Colombiana for Zoe Saldana. So Zoe Saldana is the main protagonist, and she has a gun. So if you want to see Zoe Saldana with a gun, awesome. I don't think it's that great of a film. I probably enjoyed No Strings Attached more because I I get more out of romances than I do with action movies. No, legitimately, there are some things about No Strings Attached I did find fascinating. Anyways, but Colombiana, it's just Zoe Saldana with the gun, and I like Zoe Saldana. That's all. Mandy and the Forgotten Christmas. I've talked about the Mandy books / movies here and there. So this is just the third one they did. This one does not star Lexi Johnson as Mandy. So different Mandy. When I watched it, whenever I did, I had no problem with different casting. I could tell it was different. She is different, but I enjoyed it regardless at the time. Don't know what I'd say now, but it's part of my history, and that's the overview.
Yeah. Of the films here, I've seen Attack the Block, which is a recent one that I've seen. This one was notable for being like a standout role for John Boyega, which got him eyed for the Star Wars sequel trilogy. But there's a lot of names here when I watched it when I was like, yes, I recognized a bunch of these people that they do a lot of stuff later. Again, John Boyega he had a role in the Star Wars sequel trilogy. Then we had Jodie Whittaker, who would later be on Doctor Who, and then there's one other person who I know from DC Arrowverse. Yeah, it's a very different film, alien invasion film that it kind of takes a minute to get used to, like the style of this particular setting. So took a minute to get used to, but it was fun in its own way once you got into it. And then the other one I saw was the Sherlock Holmes one, which I agree that I preferred the first one over this one, although this one depicts the books more, especially the big one, the Rock'n'Rock Falls. So yeah, that's it.
Yeah, of these, I have seen Drive, which I went into because I only saw it last month. So there is a very particular reputation that this one has, in a very particular kind of person who seems to like this movie. So I went in with that sort of in the back of my mind, and it was fascinating to watch through that lens of the protagonist is often, at least from what I have seen online, thought of as like this like silent, he's quiet, but he's actually like super cool character. Watching the movie, he actually read as like very socially anxious, which I think maybe says more about the people who really relate to this character than they maybe want to let on. I was struck by how like the awkwardness of certain scenes, whereas his silence isn't actually reading as tough, it's reading as like, oh, he just legitimately does not know how to talk to people. um it has like a lot of really interesting style, and it's sort of, to me, it seemed like a fusion of sort of noir with also a lot of like western elements, weirdly. And like just the way it films LA, and yeah, the opening sequence is so good, and everything after that doesn't quite live up to it. But I did find it fascinating to finally sit down and watch that, just knowing the reputation it has. um I had forgotten that Attack the Block was from this year, so I didn't have it on my list of things to watch, and now I'm a little bit disappointed that I didn't get around to it, because that is one that I have been meaning to see for a while. um yeah, Sherlock Holmes Game of Shadows, I remember liking it. I don't remember much about it. And then I will say I haven't seen the Colombiana, but when I was looking up stuff about it to add it to the slides here, I was like, oh, I should see this. This one probably takes place in Colombia. And no, it doesn't. So I was disappointed in that.
All right, well, moving on to my honorable mentions. We start with a few anime films. We have the first one, which is, I think the English title is Forest of Fireflies. It's about only 40 minutes long. It's a pretty short story about this girl who befriends an ageless forest spirit who she
Oh,
visits every
Totoro.
huh? Yeah,
Totoro.
Totoro, but yeah, so she visits every summer So we see this little girl grow up and kind of develops feelings, and so it almost goes into a very awkward territory, but then the film ends before it could ever do anything with that. So um yeah, I yeah, I'll leave it there. The next one is the children who chase lost voices. This is a Makoto Shinkai film, who would later do films like Suzume, Your Name, Weathering with You. This is uh his attempt of doing a Miyazaki Ghibli film. There's a lot of elements that I felt were similar. The specific film I think this one is referencing is Castle in the Sky. Um, but I'm also seeing elements that would later make up his future films. It's it's a film about life and death and trying to maintain the balance of accepting that is the balance of nature and accepting it. I'll leave it there. Next up is a Ghibli film from Up on Poppy Hill. I typically enjoy the slice of life Ghibli films. This is top three of that specific genre. It's a fun one. It's also one that kind of goes into an odd territory where this girl and this boy they start liking each other, but then they have to uncover a mystery because they find out they could actually be distant cousins, and so um,
Not distant cousins, John.
yeah, you're more direct. Um, and
Not
so
distant cousins at all, John. Siblings.
yeah, okay.
Oh my gosh, that's funny.
So then it becomes a mystery about that. Don't worry, it's fine. Doesn't go too much spoilers.
This is the
Um,
one that Disney didn't want to distribute, by the way. Oh, that doesn't have anything to do with anything. But they were like, "Oh, this is too much for us."
but yeah, it's another slice of life film that I enjoy. Next up, we have All Star Superman, which is the story of Superman who finds out that he's dying, and so the film is just about him trying to prepare Earth for him leaving. This was one of the stories that was like going around as like, this is one of the inspirations for the new recent Superman film. And I will say, no, I didn't see any connections between the two except maybe 5%. So don't know what they're talking about. Next up, we have The Artist, the modern silent film. I thought it was pretty good. It's a story about a silent film star, and then as Hollywood goes, sound comes in, and the person has to find out where they live in that. Next up, we have Rango, this very interesting animated film starring Johnny Depp as this actor chameleon who finds himself in this western town. It's an odd one, but it's fun. Next up, we have Barbie Princess Charmskull. This has my favorite animation style of all the Barbie films. It has a lot of funny side characters. Portia, I think, is in this one. So,
Yes, Portia, the floor cakes.
yes. Yes, this one has a lot of
Portia.
fun stuff. And then the last one I'll mention is the Muppets remake film, the film that tried to bring back the Muppets. I enjoyed this one a lot. It's the only modern Muppets that I've enjoyed, so yeah, I'll leave it there.
Yeah, of these I have seen from Up on Poppy Hill, which I really liked the first time I saw it, and then when I rewatched it, it didn't quite hold up as much. That seems to be a theme with my 2011 stuff. Um, but I do have a lot of fondness for it, and it has like a very touching story. And Anton Yelchin plays the male lead in the English dub, and I mean his voice is just so interesting that I really like it. Though the rest of the English dub maybe isn't worth listening to. Um, the artist is one that I think its reputation is a little bit unfair. It won Best Picture, and a lot of people think it shouldn't have won Best Picture, so it maybe gets criticized more than it should. I really liked it when I watched it, and like it works very well as a silent film. Rango, I haven't seen it recently enough to comment. Princess Charm School, John and I did an episode on that. Really loved it. Muppets, I have not seen it recently. Academy Award winner for Best Original Song,
Huh.
notably in a year that had 2 song nominees. It was either this one or the one from Rio. They went with the Muppets one.
Good choice.
Yep.
Yeah, I haven't seen any of these.
All right. With that, let's move on to our number ones.
Yeah, my number 1 is The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. This is directed by David Fincher, based on the novel by Stieg Larsson, which I have actually read and is very good. And yeah, this is about a disgraced journalist who is hired to solve the 30-year-old mystery of a young woman who went missing and is presumed dead. And he is aided in his investigation by the titular girl, a hacker with a troubled past. This is a 3-hour long movie that feels like a 2-hour long movie. When I most recently rewatched this a couple years ago, I'll often start a movie and then like partway through I'll be like, oh, I want a snack or a drink or something. So I'll wait for a good pausing moment and I'll pause it and go and get my snack or drink or whatever. Um, so I'm watching this movie in about 40 minutes and I'm like, oh, I could go for some water or something. I'll wait till the next good stopping point. I watched the entire movie without stopping it. I was just so engaged with everything that was going on that I never felt like there was a good moment for me to pause and go and get a drink of water. I'm like, I would rather have a dry throat than stop this movie. Um, yeah, it's just this completely engrossing mystery. Like all good mysteries, it is as much about the detectives as it is about the mystery, and we're learning about the characters and their relationships and their relationships to each other and their past. We get just enough about them to be interesting while not revealing too much, which is, I haven't read the sequel books, but I have seen the sequel to the Swedish version of this movie, and I think that one maybe gets a little bit too much into characters in a way that I didn't like. Um, it does have this like weird sort of fourth act to it after the mystery has been solved. There is still some stuff that gets sorted out. I like that part. I know, John, I've read your Letterboxd review, so I know you have something to say about that. But the ending scene of this is so incredible. The way it concludes this story and this relationship between these two characters is just, oh, it's so profound and deep. Um, I will say, to bring up a conversation we were having a little bit earlier, um, one of the more controversial elements in this film, and one of the reasons that I can't really fully recommend this to everyone, is it does have some depictions of sexual assault that are, to me, feel a little bit gratuitous. I actually ended up um, skipping ahead when I watched it most recently because they're just very harrowing. And this was kind of released before that was a conversation that was being had more generally. But I do think it is. There are reasons that they depict it that way, and there's sort of a payoff to that. But for me, it felt a little bit gratuitous, and is a it makes me hesitate a little bit when recommending this to people because those scenes are very difficult to sit through, intentionally so. Like they are supposed to be, but I do wonder if there was maybe a more restrained way to go about it. But yeah, besides that, this is such a fantastic film. Also, like one of the best trailers ever. The teaser trailer for this is incredible.
Yeah, I saw this a year or two ago when I went through a bunch of David Fincher films. This is one that I know that you have talked about loving for so many years, and so yeah, watching it, it is very well made, very well edited and put together. But yeah, those hard scenes are very hard to watch, and kind of make me not want to watch this film ever again. Um, you were alluding to my thoughts about the ending. I don't particularly love the point where the film ends. I think it is either a couple scenes too long or several scenes too short. So that is
Okay.
my general
Do
place
you
to
like
say it.
the, if you remember it, do you like the final note it ends on, or is it just
Not really.
the okay?
I like okay. What I like the final point of like the main story. It's just everything after that just felt like extra
Okay.
stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I
I
think
didn't.
having read the
Yeah,
book, that kind of prepared me for that, and then the final scene to me is just, especially on rewatch, just hit so profoundly the emotions of it.
sure. Yeah, yeah.
The feel bad
Yeah.
movie of Christmas, as it was marketed, perhaps
Oh
not
boy,
the best way to sell. Who wants to
you
see the feel bad movie of Christmas?
you will be feeling bad at Christmas. That's for sure.
Yeah,
For
I
more
will say, like,
than
there is catharsis to what happens throughout the film. There, it doesn't end in a heavy place, at
no,
least in terms of that specific element.
no.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't seen it. I think there was. I didn't know details about the movie, so my hesitation was the fact that like it's part one.
This is very much a complete story. Like,
Yeah.
there is, the franchise does expand beyond this, but you can watch this as a standalone. Like, I hadn't read the sequel book, and I hadn't seen the sequel movie to the Swedish version until earlier this year. And like, having now seen it, I'm like, oh, I actually don't think I really needed to see it because I don't like
Uh,
it that much. Maybe
uh,
the book is better. I hope the book is better. But yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah. The
like,
author actually died before finishing his intended series, which there's a lot of
interesting.
stuff. That's, yeah, that's its own podcast.
yeah.
Actually,
Um,
the author died before any of the books were published, if I'm not mistaken.
that's wild.
Yeah.
Um, so my number one film, just like I said, beginning, that I was not ashamed to have. Thor is my number five, and I am not ashamed to say that Captain America: The First Avenger still comes out on top as my favorite movie of 2011. And if I go so far to say it's a top three or top five MCU film for me, um, I um, I like what we're given. That's kind of the short of it, really. I mean, I am a huge Peggy Carter fan. That's also
Hold on, Christopher. I need to stop. I'm sorry. I screwed up. I put on the wrong slide. Let me fix this real quick. Here you go. Here's the right slide.
oh, are do you do something on your end? Like,
Oh, I don't think Christopher has the slides open right now, John.
Oh, you ruined it. We had a perfect joke. We had a perfect joke set up, and you ruined
You,
it.
John. I am putting this on you because you had this idea.
Yes. Thanks. All right.
So John made a separate version of the slide that is entirely pictures of Peggy Carter, including the character poster of Haley Atwell as Peggy Carter in place
that's
of the
incredible.
regular poster.
Oh my goodness, that would have been so incredible. Why did that not appear on my end? I'm sad now. That would have been
Mm.
so peak. Anyways, I will say I am a huge Peggy Carter fan. Honestly, I remember as I was watching through the MCU, I kind of like was like, "Oh my gosh, Iron Man," and kind of like just had to watch Iron Man. And then whenever I got around to this movie, I probably like watched Iron Man 1 and 2, and then Thor and Captain America to get to Avengers, so I could get more Iron Man. But with this movie, I was like, "Oh my gosh, I love Peggy Carter." So I do think in my MCU binge, I paused the MCU to watch the Peggy Carter show. huge Agent Carter fan. I really enjoyed Agent Carter's show personally. But again, it's probably because I like the character. So, uh, oh well.
I mean, I've
But
heard
yeah,
good
so
things about the show, and Jod has actually seen it, so he can
Yeah, I've
probably
actually seen it.
speak to
Yeah.
that more.
yeah, I really enjoy it. But yeah, so obviously she's a significant part in the story of this for sure, and obviously she's cool enough here that made me want to go see more. But regardless, it still is, Captain America's story. I just really like this movie. It's my favorite Captain America movie. A lot of people are like, "Oh my gosh, I love Winter Soldier." A lot of people love Civil War. I love the first Avenger. Like it kind of surprises me that this isn't said more often from people. Why isn't this other people's favorite Captain America film? Tell me, please tell me. I don't understand.
I haven't seen them recently enough to say. I think for me, the last time I watched it, it felt a bit like one big montage to me,
Mm,
um,
understandable.
where it felt like scenes didn't really take their time; they just kind of happened. But again,
Hmm.
I haven't seen it in a while. It was never. I mean, Captain America has never been one of my favorite superheroes. So this isn't one that I've really revisited all that much.
Yeah. Um, this is one that I enjoyed when it came out, but kind of just gets forgotten every time like a new sequel comes out. In retrospect, I think I enjoy it more now than I did back then. In retrospect, so I think it's aged pretty well. Yeah.
Yeah, it is one of those that, like, I mean, just like Thor, it is has sort of a stylistic difference that kind of sets it apart from other Marvel movies a little bit.
Well, moving on to my number one, we have Mission Impossible 4 Ghost Protocol. So, yeah, with the Mission Impossible franchise, they were trying different things for the first three films. Um, until we got here, where they finally figured out the formula that they wanted to do for the rest of the franchise. So, yeah, now each new film is going to be marketed for a very specific marquee stunt. So, now from this point forward, there's a giant stunt that they do that they're going to market the entire film for. So, this one, um, here Tom Cruise is climbing and swinging off the Burj Khalifa, which at the time, or probably still is now, the tallest building in the world. So,
I think there's another the clock tower in somewhere. I don't
somewhere.
remember, but yeah, it's up there.
Yep, it's definitely up there. So yeah, it's a fun one. It's one that definitely kind of gets lost after the next few films, but it's still a pretty solid adventure. Um, Lots of fun stuff. The stunts are great. The comedy's pretty fun. We got a fun cast of side characters. Yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, this is really the one that turns Mission Impossible into a franchise that can continue into the 2010s. It feels throwbacky in a way that a lot of other franchises at this point were going for the Jason Bourne, more realistic, more gritty. This one is, going back to big gadgets and big stunts and stuff that doesn't feel nearly as grounded, and has a lot of fun with it. This one is a lot of fun. I think what comes after it is, or at least the next two movies are even better than this, in a way that, like, yeah, I don't think about this one as much when I think about Mission Impossible, but it is still, like, I mean, that is more so because the other two are so high quality that this one is like really good,
Mm.
but not quite up there for me.
But it's still always a fun ride every time I revisit the franchise and
Yeah,
watch through this and be like, oh yeah, this one's good too.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I binged through the Mission Impossible movies to get to the Final Reckoning, so there's a degree where the movies feel a little fragmented in my head, just like a bunch of ideas. Um, and I mean, arguably, like this, you have the building climbing stunt, and you have, the scene in India at the end, um, which I gotta say, uh, I think especially because of the the scenes in India, kind of does make this movie stand out more than some of the other ones. Um, there's just a uniqueness with that culture, um, and throwing that unique culture in a movie like this makes it fun. So yeah, there are definitely some very like standout moments I think in this movie, just very distinct. I mean, like the opening sequence in Russia, climbing the building. You got Russia, India, very very distinct moments that makes this movie stand out. Um, yeah, so it's enjoyable. I maybe going through Mission Impossible wasn't in the right headspace for all of them because on a very surface level, it could feel a little samey. Um,
They're tough to binge.
yeah, yeah, I would have liked to watch each one in more isolation, honestly, because that was kind of the case when I watched the first one. I think I watched the first one in like January, and then there was like months between I got to the second one, and I think I just kind of watched like 2 through 8 in like within a month or two's time, and so um, yeah. So arguably, I still really I've had the most thrills with the first one. I feel like, but they're all good in their own way.
All right. Well, with that, why didn't we talk about some sour stuff with our least favorite films?
I feel like mine is probably a bit controversial. I don't know if this is my least favorite thing from the year, but this is the one where immediately, or like even as I was watching it, I'm like, oh, I just wanna. I have so much to say about why I dislike this one. And this is Samsara, directed by Ron Frick. I don't. I have limited experience with non-narrative films like this. I have seen some. I've seen Koyaanisqatsi. I've seen Ascension. I think is the one about set in China. I've seen a couple of other ones, but yeah. Um, so the thing about Koyaanisqatsi, which is probably the most iconic of this type of film, is that it has such a clarity of purpose, and each image feels very intentional, and it's building this narrative that these images fit into. And even though there isn't any dialogue and there's no characters or story or anything, you are understanding the message it is saying, and it's very cohesive. Samsara has a lot of great individual moments and great individual scenes, but no real sense of how they should all fit together. It's kind of like, that domino meme where you have like one thing at the very bottom and then this big domino that's like something completely unrelated that you're like, how does this one lead to that one? And then you follow each individual domino and you're like, oh, I can kind of see how those. Yeah. That's this movie in a nutshell. Um it's just like, here's some shots of different mountains from around the world. Now here's some shots of people working in factories. Now here's some shots of Dubai. And it's like, what's the story you're telling? There's a sequence that goes, or a set of sequences. It starts with different images of poverty around the world, that then goes into different images of child coffins. Then it goes to an image of a guy in a coffin that is shaped like a gun. Then it goes into images of guns and bullets. Then it goes into military parades. Then it goes into the Korean Joint Security area. Then it goes to Jerusalem, and then it goes to people praying. So there is clear intentionality in terms of which sequences are being placed after which sequences. But this entire thing together like, is it drawing a connection between poverty and violence? But then it's also drawing this connection between violence and nationalism, and then nationalism and religion. And it's just like none of these juxtapositions feel entirely intentional to me. It kind of just feels like they had 5 separate sequences and then just kind of said, oh, well, this one ends with a gun shaped coffin. So now it's time to put in the gun stuff. It's like, what is the story that is building here? And there isn't really a sense of what. It just kind of feels very scattershot. That in like trying to be about everything, it ends up being about nothing because it's trying to do so much that it can't really do anything. Um, this is also this is filmed in 25 different countries, but I honestly couldn't tell you which ones. There's certain things that I recognize, certain places, certain cultural markers that I was like, okay, this scene is in Tibet, this scene is in India, this scene is in LA, different things. Um, but it's presenting all of these different cultures condensed into a singular sense of otherness. This is created by Western directors. A lot of it focuses on Eastern cultures, but again, without delineating, which culture is which. It's kind of there's like scenes of or a scene of a Hindu statue that then leads into a scene of Buddhist monks, and there's no sense that the movie is drawing a distinction between these two separate religions. Just kind of like, these religions, but then they don't like cut to like a Christian church. They cut to like the Palace of Versailles. So they aren't like doing religions around the world. They're just doing, hey, look at these Eastern religions that are different from what you might know. um so yeah, it just like the way it's approaching things just feels a little bit off. And then unlike Koyaanisqatsi and the Qatsi films, this does not have the benefit of a Philip Glass score. So yeah, I have enjoyed these types of non-narrative documentaries before. This one just, again, as I was watching it, nothing cohered in a way that told me a story. It was just a whole lot of different images, and sometimes the juxtapositions said something. More often, they just were kind of like, "Oh, now here's some mountains. Here's a waterfall. Oh, now here's some factories. Have fun with that." Yeah, I assume neither of you are familiar with this one.
I actually heard of it
Oh,
as I
okay.
was probably looking for 2011 films, but that's kind of all it went. I can't lie. Typically, I will filter out documentaries when looking for films, and so this is labeled on Letterboxd as a documentary. So I was like, that one's out.
Yeah,
Just a silly little thing you mentioned, Phil Glass, which I think the one piece of his I'm familiar with was like I think it was used in Stranger Things. It was like uh, a standout music score and sequence. So I
I
just
wouldn't
looked
be
him up.
surprised if that's from Koyaanisqatsi. I can probably look that up because that is
Mm,
such an iconic. Like they use part of that soundtrack in the Watchmen movie.
Hmm.
mm. So I just thought it was funny. I just went to look him up on Letterboxd. And I didn't know he did the score for Truman Show, but then he also did Fan Four Stick.
Okay, yeah. The prophecies from Koyaanisqatsi is in Stranger Things season 4.
Ooh.
Incredible piece.
Yeah,
Like it
I
elevated that scene.
yeah. There's a great trilogy box set of the Qatsi films from the Criterion Collection, and if
Okay.
you are looking to watch a non-narrative documentary like that, I think Koyaanisqatsi is a really great place to start.
Okay then. I will keep that in mind because again, I just that music was incredible. So
Yeah, I mean it's worth it for the music, and then the visual. I mean the visuals of Koyaanisqatsi are so groundbreaking. Even though now you watch it now and you're like, oh, this looks like stock footage. In fact, someone has actually done re-edited the trailer for Koyaanisqatsi entirely using stock footage, but the stock footage is inspired by Koyaanisqatsi rather
mm.
than the other way around. Anyway, this isn't the Koyaanisqatsi podcast. That's our top 5 of whatever year that comes out. I'll have to talk about that.
Yeah, you know me, not heard or seen this film, so yeah.
My least favorite film is a movie called Soul Surfer. I did read the book before watching this, and I think both of those happened in the year 2015. Um, I mean, it's cool. You know, she keeps surfing after shark attack. That is cool, but I don't necessarily remember significance about the book necessarily. That I'm not necessarily judging that. I'm judging the movie, and I just do not care for this movie. I just there's just nothing. It gives you the base story, you know, like tragedy happens, get over it, win one sports event, end of movie. Like it could be a non sorry, it could be a fiction narrative, but it's virtually a non-fiction narrative that is fit into a fiction narrative for Hollywood. I just don't care for it. It just there's nothing. The only thing that makes this of any note is that it's based off a true story. Um, I probably didn't necessarily hate it when I watched it initially. I was probably indifferent about it. But I think the more it's kind of just like sat in my head, the more I'm just like, there's the movie doesn't really offer anything, which is unfortunate. I don't I don't necessarily remember the book, but I mean, I understand the need to dramatize things if you're doing it based off a true story kind of thing. But I don't know. I don't think this movie is really worth anything personally.
Yeah, I haven't seen this in quite a while. I remember when it came out and there being some like a lot of to do about the shark attack scene as sort of this very intense moment. I would guess if I rewatched it now, it wouldn't feel nearly as intense, just because I think this is a PG movie even.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, at the time, that was the big thing: was this intense scene. You're never gonna believe it. Um,
That's so interesting because I completely disagree. And when
okay,
from what I heard, and again, I don't know what people were discussing back then, and maybe just because it was a PG movie, therefore it's shocking or something.
yeah,
But from what I heard, like they tried to kind of replicate the shark attack from what happened. So it's actually, in my opinion, the least dramatized part of the movie.
okay,
It just is very like it is what it is, and it's kind of more like the fact that it's not dramatized is what makes it shocking. And so
okay,
it's really like, oh, we got to take her to the hospital. That's what's that's what
yeah,
almost like brings up the tension, whether that's dramatized or not. Like that's just drama, period.
yeah.
And so I think maybe it's just the fact that there's a shark scene in the PG movie, and that's a scary thought kind of thing. So
Yeah, I think
if
it's very
anything,
much like.
I
Oh,
think if
go ahead.
anything, like to go a non-dramatized format, kind of just it is what it is. Because I think maybe especially for you, once you watch it, you'll kind of be like that's it.
Mhm.
Yeah, so that's one thing I'll give this movie. It kind of just it the shark attack. That's what happened, basically, kind of thing.
Yeah, I think it was just, especially since it's like, it's not only is it a PG movie, but it's like a faith based movie. So it's an audience that isn't
Mm,
necessarily going to be watching movie. And it reminds me a bit of, to bring up one of my honorable mentions, the Twilight Breaking Dawn Part One has this infamous birth sequence that is like, to hear it described from people who saw it at the time who are like Twilight fans is like the most intense thing that was ever put in any movie. When
mm-hmm.
you watch it, just like when I watched it, as someone who has seen like a decent amount of horror movies and has seen some pretty intense stuff depicted on screen, I was like, that's it.
Mm-hmm.
And it was very much like for the audience, that was very intense. Whereas for me, it didn't read that way.
Yeah.
It is like a very intense scene. And looking at the clip of the shark attack on YouTube, it does look like the editing is very tense, and they're showing more of it
Hmm.
than I would have expected, which is interesting. But
Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah, I
I
don't
do
remember
remember
the
the like
editing.
yeah the
I just remember
sentimentality of
like,
it, of
yeah,
like
I
the
just
rest of the
remember the
movie.
moment itself is just very like, and that's what happened kind
Yeah,
of feeling. And yeah, again, in my memory, it was more like just what happened afterwards is almost more intense than the incident itself.
yeah. But yeah,
Yeah,
I could definitely I remember the sentimentality of the later stuff being a little saccharine, to use a big word.
I haven't seen the film. I remember the time period when this came out, where I'd seen the trailers in the theaters. I've seen the TV spots, and to me, the trailers told me enough of the film story to be like, okay, I don't really need to watch it. I get the sentiment. She loses her arm, and she learns how to surf again. That's pretty neat. But
And see, that's the thing. Like at that base level, like you almost have to dramatize it for a Hollywood movie. I
yeah,
kind of understand that, but it's just so kind of like by the numbers,
yeah,
you know?
yeah.
Because yeah, that is the base story.
So I have nothing else to say about it. But moving on to quote unquote my least favorite of the year. Um, it's not the worst film that I think exists of this year, but it's one that I chose what I chose because I want to talk about some stuff about it. So it is 2011's The Thing, the modern prequel slash remake of the 80s John Carpenter The Thing film. And yeah, there were a lot of well intentions going into this film. Like the creators really wanted to tell this film, like do a more modern version of the thing. It has a decent cast. I think it has a decent story. I think it plays out decently well. And they were wanting to recreate the experience of watching the 80s film, so they're like, that film was well known for its like gruesome graphic practical effects that look really well. So they decided to go that route, and like they put so much effort into the puppetry and the effects, like trying to recreate this classic 80s film. And then they showed the first cut of the film to the studio, and the studio heads came out and says, this film looks too much like an 80s horror movie. And so they ordered the filmmakers to replace all the scenes that they did with the monster with CGI, and ultimately made the film look worse and just not scary or intense at all. So yeah, it's a shame because I think there's some good elements to this. I think this could be interesting as a decent prequel, but it ultimately got ruined by the bad decision to replace this scary thing with a thing that just doesn't really look scary now, or doesn't feel scary anymore. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I've heard the behind the scenes story about this, and sort of that they had made this film that was really harkening back to this era of filmmaking, and then had to go in and kind of undo all of that. I really like John Carpenter's The Thing, and for that reason, I've kind of been hesitant to watch this one. I If they ever release a version with the practical effects, I would love to watch that, but I don't
Hmm.
know if that is on the radar for any. That feels like something that, like, I don't know if Arrow Video would do that, but that feels like it would be up their alley.
I haven't seen either version.
All right. Well, that's what we have for this month, this year of films. Any other things you guys want to talk about for this year?
Yeah, this felt like to me a little bit weaker of a year. But there, I mean, the stuff that I love, I do love from this year.
Yeah, it's not a year that I go to and think this is like a year of the last strong films. I think there are good films of this year. They're just years that overshadow this year. So
Yeah,
yeah.
including maybe the next year,
Hmm.
2012.
We'll see. But with that, yeah, thank you guys for listening. I'm gonna see you all next time. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.